It's Michelle Hart, mornings on 107.9 LITE-FM. If you're enjoying our Coffee With series, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel because we're going to do a lot more of these. And today, it is Coffee with the Conductor. We have Eric Garcia here from the Boise Philharmonic, and it's been a busy couple weeks for you guys with the Philharmonic playing the Harry Potter show last weekend.
Yes.
How did that affect the preparation for the performance you guys have this weekend?
The last time we spoke, we were about to have our opening weekend. And then just 2 weeks after that, Harry Potter. When you go see any film with John Williams' score, the music is kind of hidden underneath until the big fanfare has happened. But there's so much occurring underneath. So, you know, the Philharmonic, they rise to the challenge. They're an incredible group. So they had that last week, and this week we started last night jumping into subscription series 2. Which is by no means
right.
a walk in the park.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, you know, even the last show you guys did when you were with the Master Chorale, you guys had a little multimedia, and it was really cool to see the lyrics and stuff on the screen.
That's right.
What are some of the creative ways you guys have seen multimedia like built into a symphony performance? Obviously, with the Harry Potter show, it was the 40-foot screen with the movie. But what are some other ways?
Well, looking forward to a piece that we're performing later in the season by this young composer, Adam Schoenberg. Called Finding Rothko, and it's kind of based on a reaction, a visceral reaction that he has to the paintings. And so what we will do is superimpose the painting actually visually to the side, so that you can actually look at the physical structure that inspired the music. So that's certainly one in the future this season that I'm very much looking forward to. Because it's one thing to imagine it or to see it as a small rectangle in your program, but to actually see it large and to see it there between that and the music, it's a great multi-media cross-pollination experience.
Right before I left the station to come over here, we just found out that there's one of the school districts in Eastern Idaho that's putting music programs back in '93, the elementary schools, which is pretty cool. How important is music education at that young of an age?
Oh, it can't be stated how important it is. I mean, that's where, when you're at that age, your imagination is wide open. You don't have any bias, you don't have any, well, I will listen to this, but not this. And like I said, your imagination just runs wild. So you can hear a piece of classical music, and if you ask 5 different students of that age what is in their head when they hear that piece, it's going to be 5 different, drastically different things. And there might not be one fall in the right answer. There usually isn't. And so I think that says everything. It just awakens that imagination. It awakens that. It's like a sports team. It awakens that ability to, if they perform in an ensemble, to be part of a team effort. And for me, it changed my life because I heard Aaron Copland, or I seem to remember it being Aaron Copland, Appalachian Spring, when I was in elementary school. My music teacher played us an excerpt, and I just really loved it. And ultimately, it was like another year or 2 before I really started to get into classical music. But it was that really made a huge difference. And like I said, at that age, there's no shortage of imagination. The shortage that we often encounter is them getting an opportunity to experience that music. So that's great news to hear.
So, what kind of things does the Philharmonic do to get young people into music?
Well, we have our musicians out into the schools. And last week I was able to be part of a percussion group, our percussion section that goes out into schools and plays for elementary to middle school and put on programs and perform. And I think just having an opportunity to do that. Of course, we have our children's concerts that we put on in the first part of the new year and bring in just thousands of students into Morrison and play for them really great concerts and just expose them to hearing the music, hearing the different instruments, but also being part of that audience and being part of that experience of sitting and watching such a large ensemble play this kind of music. So the Philharmonic has this long tradition of being very, very caring of the youth in our community and wanting to give them as much as we can in terms of exposure. And hopefully actually putting instruments in their hands.
So this weekend, 2 performances, Friday and Saturday, right? And I remember when I was in high school, we actually played part of one of the pieces you guys are playing.
I'm convinced that you will have played everything.
I know, right?
By the end of the season, all of these memories will come back to you. Yeah.
So we played March to the Scaffold, which is part of Berlioz's Symphony Fantastique. So I remember there was a really cool story behind the piece. For people who aren't familiar with it, what is the story behind it?
It's semi-autobiographical for Berlioz, the composer. Berlioz, like so many great composers, was a wild genius, but genius in the sense that his imagination, interesting, was just boundless. And he was in love with this beautiful actress, Harriet Smithson, this Irish actress, that he saw in Hamlet. He was heavy into Goethe, into Beethoven and Shakespeare at the time. Fell in love with her. They did not connect, they did not make a connection, but she was with them. And ultimately they would get married someday. In the meantime though, he writes this symphonic work that tells this story of a young man, young artist. You're starting to see the parallel who's in love with a young woman and she does not accept or return his love. And so he induces himself into an opium trip. So it's psychedelic. Through an opium trip, and he goes through 5 different stages. And so the symphony, or Symphony Fantastique, is in 5 movements. The first one we really get to know who he is as this lonely, love-stricken, very sensitive artist. We hear this theme. It's this theme that's associated with her, and you can't help but know it immediately because Berlioz repeats it. And when you hear it, you begin to think of this woman that he's obsessed with, and you see that this artist is incredibly obsessed with her. And the music's really it hurtles forward, and then it pulls back, and then it speeds up again, gets louder, gets incredibly soft. He is just a temperamental, now we would say bipolar personality, who is just obsessed with this person. The second movement, he goes to this beautiful ball. We hear this beautiful French waltz. Not quite like La Valse of last time, but a beautiful French waltz. And he almost makes it with that movement, but at the very end, he sees her again. And it hurtles forward and that's the end. The third movement is a scene in the countryside. And so he goes to the countryside, our character, to find some solace in nature and to escape any possibility of seeing anything that would remind him of this woman. But he does hear 2 shepherds represented by the oboe and English horn. And the oboe at the performance is always placed off stage, somewhere in the hall. But the idea is to get this idea of one shepherd is close to him, one is far away, and they play this duet with one another. And then the movement progresses. Lo and behold, we hear the theme, and we know that he's thinking of her. And in fact, he's thinking of her as possibly betraying him. You see what kind of personality this poor man is. He's imagining all of this. Perhaps she's betrayed me. And the music dies down, and we get one final conversation with these 2 shepherds. However, this time, one calls out the English horn. The oboe does not answer. So it's really heartbreaking. It's a metaphor, really, for our main character. One is calling out to the other, now the other is completely silent. And all we hear is the distant rumble of drums, of timpani in the background, which represents this thunderstorm, which is kind of booming in the distance. Then you get to your movement, March to the Scaffold. He's murdered his beloved, and he is now being marched to the scaffold. And it's a great black comedy march. It's just a really wonderful march. It's all in good kind of black ironic humor because it sounds triumphant. It's upbeat. It's in a major key, but
something so dark happening.
But he did something awful to get there, and it rises to this great climax, and then you hear this lone clarinet playing her theme. So as he's up there at the guillotine, the last thoughts he has is this thought of her. And then before the clarinet can really conclude the phrase, you get this boom from the entire orchestra. And that's the blade coming down. And if you listen really carefully, you can hear plucked strings, like bump, and that's the head rolling forward. Amazing. It's really amazing. And then it ends with a big brass fanfare. So no consolation for this poor man. His head rolls, and then there's a big, lovely fanfare. And then finally, in the last movement, he's at his burial, his death. He's at a witch's sabbath. So his death is now being attended by witches, goblins, and a horrific disfiguration of his beloved. And they dance just wildly to the end. It's incredible. And this was 3 years after Beethoven passed away.
Right.
I mean, this is 1830. We're still at the beginning of the 19th century. And all of this music and this imagination is coming out of this young 27-year-old. It's tremendous. It's really an amazing piece, but it's just so revolutionary. Every time you hear it, perform it, it feels like it was written yesterday in so many ways.
Well, and since you mentioned it being written in the 1800s, the one thing I noticed flipping through the program is most of the time when you're looking at the composers that you guys are playing, they are born in the 1800s, but one of the other pieces you guys are playing, the guy's born in 1977. Tell me a little bit about this other piece and this composer.
Yes, so Mason Beats is one of our greatest living composers. He is American. He is barely 40 years old, and he is in demand everywhere in the world. But just an incredible composer. He loves crossover. He DJs.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, or he certainly did more in the past. I have to be honest on how much he's DJing right now. And some of the music that he's written for great orchestras, other great orchestras like Chicago Symphony or Kennedy Center, you'll see him being called for to be at the back of the orchestra with a turntable with his headphones. And so you're looking at another kind of revolutionary in a sense of someone who's crossing genres or who is using their imagination to create a new kind of music, which is exactly what Berlioz did. So this piece, it's a great opening fanfare for the concert. It's called Attack, Decay, Sustain, Release. And that title automatically sell it. It gets your attention, so you want to know, first of all, what does that mean? And how does that relate to this piece? And so attack is when you strike an instrument, or pluck a string. And then after that initial rise in volume, there's a decay. And then the sustain is where it basically settles out. And then the release is when the